Everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast here on a Monday. It's a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. So Mary Kay Cabot is going to join me. We're going to answer questions from our Football Insider subscribers. We talk a lot about this upcoming quarterback battle. Deshaun Watson, what happens if he plays well? What do the Browns do next? We talk about Shedeur Sanders and what it would mean for the Browns if he won this battle. We also talk a little NFL draft and the possibilities of trading down. What would a home run look like if the Browns trade down from number 6? We get into all of that on this podcast. Find all of our socials: Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Go look for Orange and Brown Talk. Give us a like, give us a follow. And also go to YouTube. Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com is our YouTube channel. You can watch all of our podcasts there if you actually want to see us talk about this stuff. Okay, here we go. It is a Monday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Mary Kay Cabot here on a Monday. A Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast about 4 o'clock on Monday, the day before the Browns open their offseason program. That is on Tuesday. We will be out there on Wednesday to hear from Todd Monken. We'll hear from some players. So that should be interesting. And then, of course, next week, we've got Andrew Berry's pre-draft press conference. Veteran mini camp the week after that. A very busy kind of 3 weeks as things get going. And, of course, the NFL draft is getting even closer. So, Mary Kay, it's getting real. I mean, we saw video of Lamar Jackson walking into the Ravens to the Ravens OTA, not OTAs, to their offseason program today. And tomorrow we will be glued to Twitter seeing who the Browns put out there walking into that facility.
That's right. And I'll tell you what, once the offseason program begins, it feels to me like it's already game on, right? It just starts to go so fast because the offseason program has a rhythm to it. You go out there, you talk to them for the first time, then you do the pre-draft press conference, then you move right into a voluntary veteran mini camp that's coming up on April 21st. Then you go right into the draft. Then you go into rookie. I mean, it just comes right at you, one thing after another. And before you know it, you wake up and it's break time where we all just take that 5-6 week break before training camp. And it's just back on so fast. And we're here. It's almost time for some football. I cannot even believe it. It has just flown.
You do start to feel that clock ticking a little bit. It's like, training camp is I can't believe we're not that far away. We're like 3.5 months away from the start of training camp. And then, like you said, that's when it really gets real. So it's coming. It's this and fans are starting to get interested in this quarterback battle and all sorts of things. So you can imagine we got questions about that. We got draft questions as well. But let's start with this from Dave in Washington, D.C. Hey, Mary Kay. Please explain what happens next year if Deshaun Watson plays great this year. Is there any way they could even keep him financially, and why play him if not? And of course, Andrew Berry did drop that little nugget at the owners' meetings that, basically saying in response to a question, sort of framing the Shedeur, why would you play Shedeur, when he's under control versus Deshaun? If Deshaun's not going to be there, why would you even bother playing him? And Andrew basically said, well, it's not illegal to extend Deshaun Watson. So what happens if Deshaun wins this job and plays well?
Well, what happens is they would then have to consider whether or not he has played well enough to continue on with them. And do they want to then extend his contract and sign him up for a few more years, which I know that sounds crazy right now. And it certainly seemed completely far-fetched when we watched him go down with that Achilles injury in October of 2024. But lo and behold, here we are. He looks good in practices. And if it holds up and he plays well, then he actually does have a chance to get that contract extended. And if he can return to anything resembling his Pro Bowl form from Houston, then I could see them bringing him on for a couple of more years. In fact, when they first signed him, Andrew Berry, and I don't know if he was really being literal about this, but he said that he hoped it was a 10-year proposition. And we were all like, what? So even though it was a 5-year contract worth $230 million, they hoped that when they gave up those 3 first-round picks, that it was going to be much more than 5 years. So who knows? Maybe they'll get the second 5 years out of the deal. They would certainly be happy if that would happen. And it again, it seems kind of far fetched right now, but stranger things have happened.
So I was a little surprised how that comment, I mean, now we're going way back, but I was always surprised how that comment kind of took off because like when you trade for a franchise quarterback, yes, it was a 5-year deal that they gave him, but you don't trade for a guy at that age to just have for 5 years. Like a franchise quarterback is a guy that you bring in to be here for 10 years or 15 years or however long it's going to be. So I was a little surprised back then when that kind of took on a life of its own when he said that, but obviously now if we're talking about a possible extension, it just seems completely, if you'd have gone back to last year to your point, or if you'd have gone back to when he injured himself against Cincinnati and it felt so final in that moment and you would have said to me like, "Hey, you guys are going to record a pod in April of 2026 and somebody's going to ask about extending Deshaun Watson, basically," I'd have thought they were crazy. But the Browns made this choice. We've seen, Denver when they were done with Russell Wilson decided to just move on and eat the dead cap. Miami decided to just move on from Tua and eat the dead cap. The Browns have had opportunities where they could have done that, but they've decided to sort of stretch this out, keep him on the roster. And now they are in this weird situation where he's, at least for now, one of the two quarterbacks fighting for this job. And if he wins it and plays well, then they do have to answer this question we didn't think was possible a year and a half ago.
Right. And it just really all depends on him. Can he stay healthy? And if he can stay healthy, can he look like the quarterback who twice threw for over 4,000 yards in Houston, made the Pro Bowl 3 times, and in one of those years led the NFL with more than 4,800 yards? He was second in rating that year at more than 112. And so, you just have to wonder if he can return to any kind of form like that whatsoever, what would the future hold? Again, it does seem like a long shot. It seems like a stretch to think that he could revert to that when he really hasn't played a full season in 6 years. But there are a couple of ways to look at it. Sure, he's had 3 surgeries since then, but he's also saved a lot of wear and tear on his body since then as well. That's a lot of hits that he hasn't taken, a lot of crunches to the head that haven't happened, a lot of getting knocked onto his back that hasn't happened. So, so you just never really know. You don't know how he's going to respond. And I think the thing with Deshaun is you have to put him in the right kind of an offense for him. And I think the Browns are looking at this now and thinking, we don't think that ever really happened here, right? They kind of went back and forth between sort of a Kevin offense and then a Ken Dorsey offense, a hybrid sort of thing. There was never any continuity, and there certainly wasn't any continuity with Deshaun on the football field either, right? I mean, we've talked about this 11-game suspension that they thought was probably going to be 4 in his first year. Then the shoulder injury, which began in week 3 of 2023, and then the ruptured Achilles, which happened in 2024. So he's never really had a period of time where he's had an opportunity in a normal circumstance to show what he has left in the tank, to show what he can do. And even when he came out there in 2024, it had disaster written all over it. Nobody practiced that training camp. It was a Ken Dorsey offense. It was, but Kevin was still calling it in the beginning of the year. It just was a recipe for disaster. They didn't have great weapons around him necessarily, and none of it worked out. So we'll have to see now. I still think that they need 2 more premier pass catchers if either of these quarterbacks are going to excel and look really good. I think you need a lot of dangerous weapons around you. And I never believe that the Browns have enough of those weapons. So they've got to add some of those. And if they do, then who knows what can happen with Deshaun Watson. And if in the best case scenario, he plays really well and they have to find a way to extend it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it would be shocking if we did get to this point, right? Just because of all of the reasons, we're 6 years removed from that Houston season. He's played 19 games. He's coming off, 3 major surgeries now, 2 to repair the one Achilles. And then of course that shoulder injury. I mean, it has been a long time. It would be like unprecedented for him for this to happen. But it is sort of an interesting thought exercise. Like, and for the Browns, I think it would be best for them if Shedeur Sanders seized to this job and proved he could be the starting quarterback. But it's a fun thought exercise. Well, I don't know if fun is the right word for Browns fans, but it's an interesting thought exercise to think about what it could look like. Like, if you get to next offseason and he plays maybe not Pro Bowl level football, but he's a top 15 quarterback in the league. How do you approach that? Do you give him like a Sam Darnold contract that is essentially like a 3 year, it would be a 3 year deal, but it's actually like more 2 years, and then you still draft somebody behind him or something like that? I just think it would open up so many just weird possibilities for this team to where they could even still draft a quarterback in 2027, and Deshaun would just kind of be the veteran placeholder for a couple more years or for like a year or whatever. So I don't know. It's again, I said fun. I don't think Browns fans think it's fun necessarily, but it's interesting to think about if he plays well, what would they do next offseason? And it wouldn't be a terrible problem to have.
It is very interesting to think about. And as we head into the start of the quarterback competition, which begins in earnest tomorrow, they're getting their playbooks tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, now we're not going to be out there until Wednesday, but starting tomorrow, these guys can be coached up on the playbook. They've had it in their possession, but now the coaches can work with them on going over plays and installation and implementation of the game plan. And it's time. It's go time for these guys. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. And I think that's why we are hearing so many different messages coming out of the organization about, is Shedeur going to start? Does he have the edge? Does Deshaun have the edge? Because they don't know. They don't know. They have to see who gives them the best chance to win. And I do think that that is going to be the determining factor. Who is actually going to give them the best chance to win? Because I think the Cleveland Browns recognize, and I know Jimmy Haslam recognizes, that the fans don't have a huge appetite for a bunch more losing. They need to get to some winning. They need to get to some feel good on this football team. They've got PSLs to sell. They've got a big stadium coming. They need to get to winning and get people back on board with this football team and kind of turn down the volume on the anger a little bit.
Yeah, and then I think what's so interesting, like that idea of who gives you the best chance to win is I think that's an interesting way to put it, because there is a world where we're out there and we're watching these practices, and like I think Shedeur Sanders is going to look great in these practices. I thought he looked really good last year, and he's going to make some unbelievable throws. But then you wonder, does Todd Monken look at this and say maybe Shedeur gives us a bigger upside in a way? But there's also a downside there, because we know sometimes he'll put the ball in harm's way, and he'll throw some interceptions or some balls that maybe should be intercepted. And maybe Deshaun protects the ball a little more than Shedeur does. I think all of that kind of factors into this as they go through this process, to where there could be a world where we're out there watching Shedeur Sanders make some really high level throws because he does that in practice. But for whatever reason, the Browns look at Deshaun Watson and say, he maybe gives us the best chance to win, at least early in the season.
Well, that's what is going to make this quarterback competition so fascinating and also so difficult. Because here is the truth of the matter, and you know it, and I know it, and everyone should know it if they don't yet. And that is, it really doesn't matter all that much what you look like during OTAs in May. It doesn't matter what you look like during the mandatory minicamp in June. And it doesn't even matter what you look like on those hot summer days in training camp and against the Buffalo Bills, even in joint practices. You can look great in those practices. You can even look good in some of the preseason games. None of it matters until you get into the regular season and teams are game planning for you, and they're gunning for you, and they're coming after you, and they're identifying your weaknesses. Even Bill Musgrave said last year, these defensive coordinators are going to know things about you that you don't even know about yourself. They will break down and dissect every inch of your film, every twitch in your body, every thought in your mind. They will do everything that they can to gain an edge. If they find out that you can't do X, Y, and Z, they're coming for you in those regards. And that's what we don't know yet. We don't know yet how these guys are going to look when the actual fur is flying, when the lights are on, and when it's game time. Because that's when The proof will be in the pudding. And we won't know until then which of these two guys has really picked up the offense, has really assimilated it, really has the timing down against pressure with Jerry Jeudy, with Isaiah Bond, with Harold Fannin. We're not going to know yet. And even in the case of Shedeur Sanders, even though I thought he did some really, really good things last year, and I saw it, I see what they're talking about with the elite playmaking ability and all of that. But now defensive coordinators are going to have a little bit of film on him, and they are going to have an off season to study that film and to specifically have people that are, you know, designated to study that film and really look at it and figure out how can we game plan for a guy like this. And that really hasn't happened yet. And sometimes that's why sometimes we see that sophomore slump for a quarterback, right? It's no mystery why that happens. It's because brilliant defensive coordinators get their hands on the tape and they dissect it and they study it like crazy and they attack your weaknesses. And so that's what's going to happen this coming year. And it's going to be a matter of how can Shedeur beat that and how can Deshaun beat that? And to a certain extent, we have to keep saying Dylan Gabriel, even though I really don't believe he's in the top two of this quarterback competition. But you can never rule him out because you never know what might happen. So we have to keep talking about it in those terms. But at this point, I think for all intents and purposes, it's really a two-man race.
Well, and I think too, one of the prime examples of that is we sit there and we watch preseason games all the time. And they don't game plan for preseason games very much, you know. So these guys are going out there, they're doing their thing, and the defense is doing their thing, and then it's kind of, you know, it's all pretty vanilla. And so last year, right, Shador looked awesome in that first preseason game. Dylan Gabriel looked really good in that home preseason game. And then you get out there on the real thing on Sundays, and like Dylan Gabriel looked like it looked completely different for him. And Shador looked better than Dylan Gabriel, but even he had some of his struggles, and it wasn't as easy for him as it was in the preseason. So, like we see that in action every single year when we sit there and watch. Okay, here's how this looks in the preseason when that defensive coordinator isn't spending his entire week game planning for you. They're just kind of out there doing their thing. It changes dramatically as soon as that calendar flips to week one.
Absolutely 100%. And on the opposite side of the coin, even though you're going to have these defensive coordinators game planning for you in a way that they haven't been able to before, the other side of the story is that let's just take Shedeur Sanders, for instance. He is going to have a bunch of things that he didn't have last year in working in his favor. Number one, a whole entire offseason full of reps with the starters. Those are invaluable. He did not get them at all until it was time to start against the Raiders in week 10 or 11 or whatever week it was. So he didn't get those. He's going to have those all offseason now. We've seen him working out really hard. He's changed his body. Jimmy Haslam has told us that. I've seen clips of him in a weight room, bench pressing 250 pounds or whatever it is. And so he's working really hard at that. He's working really hard on learning the playbook. He's watching film. He's getting himself ready to play. So he's going to have a lot of things going for him, including a much better supporting cast. They were holding that offensive line together with smoke and mirrors and chewing gum and tape last year by the end of the season. I mean, it was not even really what you would consider to be an NFL caliber offensive line sometimes. So Shador is going to have a much better offensive line. So is Deshaun to work behind. And then I also believe that they both will have some more weapons. They better have some more weapons. You need two more pass catchers that have a chance to get 1,000 yards. Now, maybe one of those is going to be Isaiah Bond. Maybe he elevates his game enough to the point where he can be that guy. And then maybe you can get Jerry Jeudy back on track. Andrew Berry talks about he believes Jerry will be better in a more operational offense. That's such a telling phrase. Such a telling phrase. They did not like what they were seeing last year or even the year before. And so now I think they really truly believe that with Todd Monken running the show, that everyone is going to fare better in this offensive scheme. So while you have the defensive guys trying to take away anything that they view as a weakness, you're going to have so many more strengths on the part of Shedeur and Deshaun and Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to this, but nothing can speak louder. Like, they can't say anything louder than the fact that they knew going into this offseason they were gonna redo this offense, rebuild the O-line, put a bunch of resources into the offense, and they made the decision to fire their offensive head coach. Like, that should tell us what. Now, we'll see if it was right or wrong, but that should tell us, like, internally what they thought of what this offense looked like the last couple years, even with the deficiencies of quarterback and the problems on the offensive line. That tells you exactly what they thought of where this team was offensively, because if they were happy with how things were going and they were going to rebuild this offense, they probably would have kept their offensive head coach around for a little bit longer.
Absolutely 100%. And I understand, and I really do pick that up from them, and so do you, that they just were not happy with what they were seeing and are looking for a more operational offense. But I think it goes hand in hand with the supporting cast. It has to go hand in hand with the supporting cast. When you have an offensive line like that, like the one that they were playing with last year, and then you have a challenged receiving core like they had last year, it's not gonna go well for your quarterback. It's just not. So, I think if you just improve all of those things by 25%, you're gonna be so much further ahead of the game than you were last year. But I certainly don't think you can just pin it on Kevin Stefanski or the scheme. I think you have to take a really good, hard, unflinching look at the talent that you had on that offense last year.
Yeah, well, and I agree with that. I think, Andrew is going to be in for some hard answers this year on some guys. Like, okay, so Cedric Tillman, has it been because of the offense and the injuries, or was that just the wrong pick? Isaiah Bond, same deal. Jerry Judy, like he's going to get some hard answers on, like, you went out and you got these guys. So was it the system, or were these just, were you picking the wrong players, trading for the wrong players? These quarterbacks that you're running out there. Maybe maybe one of these guys becomes the starting quarterback, but also maybe we get to a point where Todd Monken says, these guys aren't good enough. You guys didn't give me good enough quarterback play, and that falls on Andrew Berry. So I agree with you. I don't think this should all have fallen on Kevin Stefanski. I certainly think there were flaws. I think he was a little too rigid. I think I understand what they were looking at and saying maybe this wasn't good enough. But now the flip side of that is we're going to start to get some hard answers on some of the talent that Andrew Berry has brought in as well, which so far hasn't lived up to expectations.
No, it hasn't. In some cases, it really has not. And I think uh, what Todd Monken has to do is be really, really honest in his appraisal of this talent and what he needs to be explosive. He cannot sit back and just kind of go with the flow. He cannot do that. If he thinks they need another quarterback in the quarterback room, then he's got to be very vocal about that. If he thinks that they need at least one more premier receiver who could go out and potentially challenge for 1,000 yards, then he has to stand up and he's got to stand on the table for that. If he thinks they need another really good pass catching tight end or the blocking tight end or whatever they need, then he needs to be vocal about that. He can't just leave it up to the personnel department, because sometimes you fall in love with your own acquisitions and you can't see the forest for the trees. And I think that there definitely needs to be more dangerous weapons on this offense. There has to be. And by now, I would think that Todd Monken can see that. And I'm sure that everybody in the building can see that, but they have to address it. And granted, you can't fix everything in one offseason, but they do have the resources to fix their weapons, and they have to get some. They've got to do whatever they can to get some. And that, maybe that's the case for taking a Carnell Tate at number 6 and just saying, okay, we're going to take care of one big chunk of what we need to do. And then you go out and then you fill in more after that. But somehow, some way, they are not going to get better on offense until they have at least, at least 2 more very dangerous weapons.
Okay, let's shift gears to the draft. We got a couple of draft questions. Obviously, Mike Parker from Chester, Maryland. Hey, Mary Kay, and this is one that you actually answered in print as well. Hey, Mary Kay, if the Browns trade down from number 6, what would a home run trade look like?
Well, first of all, you would hope that they don't have to trade too far back. And they would get very lucky if a player like a Jeremiah Love is still available at number 6, who a lot of people believe is the best player in this draft, or a Caleb Downs, or one of the pass rushers, right? If one of the pass rushers slips to number 6, sometimes somebody will come up and give you something for that. Maybe some of these teams actually really do think that Ty Simpson is worth the number 6 overall pick. If it's not the Browns, maybe it's somebody else. And maybe somebody will be willing to jump up and grab that. So in a perfect world, if you were able to trade down, you would hope to only move back maybe 4 or 5 spots and still be able to get one of the players that is on your radar there in that group. Maybe it's still a pass rusher. Maybe it's a receiver. Maybe it's a tackle. But you would want to move back maybe 4 or 5 spots. And in a perfect world, you would want to get a first round pick out of that. And ideally, it would be a first round pick in 2027 when the quarterback class is shaping up to be really robust and really good. Maybe they won't need a quarterback after this year, but maybe they will. And if they do, you want to be positioned to be able to grab one of these really, really good quarterbacks that's coming out next year. And you've got Arch Manning that's coming out. You've got Lenora Sellers. You've got Dante Moore. You've got Julian Sayin. You've got many really good quarterbacks that are coming out next year. And there is a world in which you might still need one. So I think a home run would include a first round pick. And I don't know if you don't do it if you don't get that, but that's what I would be aiming for. I would be aiming for that first round pick. That would be a home run. He pulled it off last year. Let's see if he can do it again.
Yeah, and last year was instructive too, just from this idea of making sure they stay in a range they want to stay in, and he kind of laid it out for us to like we looked at the draft and we thought there were 5 elite players in this draft, and we were able to stay in a range where we were able to get one of those elite guys in Mason Graham, or a guy that at least they thought fit in that category. So I do think Andrew's going to be wary of that if he trades down. What I'm really interested in though is as they are maneuvering around this draft this year, whether it's at 6 or 24 or even later in the draft, how many 27 assets do they acquire? Like, even if they get a 2027 second rounder, do they prioritize maybe some of that over getting more picks this year? Because they already have 9 this year anyway. Do they prioritize adding to that pile next year? Because all of it can become ammunition at some point. Even a 2028 first round pick could become ammunition if you need to move up and get a quarterback. Like that all goes in that all goes in the hopper when you're trying to make that move up next year if you need to, if one of these guys doesn't show you they can be your quarterback. So I am very interested to see draft weekend when they do make moves, if they do make moves, how many moves they make to kind of continue to acquire 2027 draft capital.
100%. 100%. If you can't get that first round pick, then you're going to at least try to get a second round pick in 2027 that you can use as a bargaining chip. And maybe you try to do both. Maybe there's a world in which you try to do both somehow. And I don't know what that would involve, but I think Andrew Berry is going to be open to anything, to perhaps trading a player, to trading for a player, to trading back. So I think anything is on the table as they move into this draft. And I do think maximizing their ability to draft a quarterback next year is what they really need to be thinking of. Because here's the thing. By the time they get to the draft this year, or by the time they get to the offseason, they're not going to know if they have a quarterback yet. They're not going to know. So they almost have to set themselves up to be able to draft a quarterback in 2027. Because by the time this draft rolls around, the only thing that they're going to have under their belts with these quarterbacks are a couple of weeks of conditioning where they're not even really allowed to physically coach them on the field yet. They're allowed to be with them in meetings going over the playbook, but they're not allowed to be outside coaching them. That is still more the conditioning part of the offseason program. So they're going to have to kind of project what they think might happen. And so I think they are going to want to set themselves up for potentially needing a quarterback in the very rich or expected to be rich quarterback class of 2027.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was supposed to be this year, and then it didn't work out for them. But no, you're right. Like no matter how anyone out there listening feels about Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson, so I mean, I know we have people out there listening who are convinced Shedeur Sanders is a franchise quarterback, that he's the guy, that the Browns are set if they just give him that chance, and maybe those people are right, but the Browns can't bank on that yet. They don't know that for a fact yet. And so they have to kind of keep their options open at that quarterback position to, like you were saying, to make sure that if they need to go get a guy in 27, they can go get him. And if they end up doing that and Shedeur Sanders shows them, hey, I'm your guy, don't draft somebody, like you just found a 5th-round gem, you saw something that nobody else in the NFL saw, then great. The Browns won the lottery. And if not, they didn't take themselves out of the running for that 27 draft. They kind of have to stay in both lanes right now.
They do. They absolutely have to straddle both worlds of trying to determine what they have this year and then looking ahead to next year. And it really does seem like if you have enough draft capital that you probably should be able to get your hands on a pretty darn good quarterback in next year's draft, even if you're picking middle of the first round, I would have to say, because if there are 4 really, really good potential quality starters, you should be able to grab one of those in the top half of the first round, I would think. You never really know how it's going to work out. Maybe there's going to be a run on these guys and they're all going to go in the top 10. That could possibly happen. But there should be a world in which you could get your hands on a quarterback in the top half of the draft. And if you have enough capital, you should be able to do that. Now, once again, we are not writing off Shedeur Sanders. We're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. But just like the Browns don't know yet if he is their franchise quarterback, we don't know that yet either. It's just the honest to God's truth. I mean, he has shown really great signs of being that, but nobody knows for sure how that's going to work out yet. And 7 starts is too small a sample size to determine if a quarterback is going to be wildly successful in the NFL or is going to be a top 10, 12 quarterback in the NFL, because that is about what you would need to have a top 12 quarterback if you want to get where you want to go. So, we don't know that yet. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it plays out and seeing how these guys look. It's going to be a very exciting offseason. It's going to be a long one, a heated one. I think the battle is going to be fascinating. I think these guys are going to bring out the best in each other. I think you're going to see some high tempo, really good football, some great throws. And there's going to be a lot to watch this training camp.
Okay, we will go ahead and wrap things up there on a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been talking about this offseason program. It starts on Tuesday. We will be out there on Wednesday to hear from players, to hear from Todd Monken. So we'll have a full week of pods coming your way. Tim and Lance will do another draft pod this week, as well as we are getting super close, like 2 weeks from the draft, I believe, on Thursday. So I think I did the math right there. But it's coming one way or another, however close we are. So we are gearing up with a full week of pods this week. Find us on all your socials. Just look for Orange and Brown Talk. Give us a like or follow. Find us on YouTube. It's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. And all those questions came from our Football Insider subscribers. That's cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.